Episode 6 of 1923's second season is called The Mountain Teeth of Monsters, and in it, one story seemingly ends and several characters will meet their fate. I'm Admiral Teague, and thanks for joining me for the 1923 recap and review. Episode 6 was pretty dense with details and events, so hold on and I'll get you up to speed. It was a fun episode to watch, but it begs the question, how is this all going to wrap up in just 2 more episodes? Add to this wild rumors of episode 8 being cancelled, and one has to wonder if there's not a season 3 announcement in the works, or worry that some of this story will be held back for yet another Yellowstone prequel show. I'll address it all in this 1923 recap and review. There's a 1944 Taylor Sheridan show announced on IMDb right now. Though the details are sparse and the art makes no sense, the poster for this show features characters who are already dead, so it's hard to take that too seriously for now. In this episode, we seemingly wrap up Teonna's story and get most of the other characters within striking distance of the Yellowstone ranch. At the Yellowstone, a concerned Sheriff McDowell tells Jake Dutton about the phone call he received from Amarillo, where Spencer told him he was coming home, despite being warned not to. This is welcome news to the people holed up at the Yellowstone as they prepare for the inevitable battle with Whitfield. Out on the open prairie, we find Pete lost the gunfight with Marshal Kent we saw begin in the last episode. We see Kent rummaging through Pete's possessions for clues as Father Renault excoriates Kent for his needless actions. Kent's sickening methods and the hardships of the long pursuit have worn on Renault, and he's been pretty insane for a few episodes now. The continued privation of the long pursuit has worn on this horrible man. He's always been a sick, unworthy servant of God whose sins included murder and hubris, but now he's also gone feral. Actor Sebastian Roche has done a great job embodying this sick spirit that Taylor Sheridan has created. The result is a deeply believable bad guy. We've seen what Father Renault is all about. Here and there, he's even expressed it. He's a social Darwinist whose sick ideas would be far more welcome in 1930s Germany. The only person in this story who's more of a despicable heel is Marshal Kent, who's equally misguided but doesn't bother with the intellectual facade. He's content being a homicidal maniac with no regard for human life. When Father Renault calls him out for all his evil deeds, Kent just laughs and starts mocking Renault. He was as surprised as me when Father Renault popped him right in the liver. Turns out the priest did hold on to that pistol he got in episode 2. Renault fires again and again, leaving Kent a crumpled corpse on the prairie, having paid the price for disturbing the priest. For my part, I relished Kent's end. Then we check in with our Bozeman bad guy scheming to take out Spencer when he arrives, and this episode is off to a solid start. We check in with Teonna and Runs' horse. They're worrying about Pete and trying to read the stars to determine their position. They resolve to follow Pete's tracks after daybreak. Back at the Yellowstone, an impatient Jack impulsively rides off to join Jake in the dead of night despite warnings. Among other hazards, he's warned that grizzly bears are out of their dens and hungry. But none of this phases Jack, who just rides off alone into the darkness. At a bar in Bozeman, Banner Creighton, also a veteran of World War I, hears of Spencer's unit and war exploits and is immediately impressed. He tells his cohorts, including Clyde and some of the other new Livestock Commission deputies we saw hired by Jake and Kara in Season 1, to take Spencer out at the train station. In an effective and touching moment, we see Jake promising Kara that he will return to her before the story moves to Whitfield and Lindy, who are, as always, the inverse and opposite of Jake and Kara. The two are playing their sick, crazy games when a concerned Banner Creighton shows up to inform his boss of Spencer's impending arrival. Whitfield deems that all the Duttons are to be wiped out and dumped in the most remote part of the park. It's then that Whitfield marvels at what an apt pupil Lindy is, alluding to all the deeds his plan had implied. He mentions that compromising politicians is an ongoing endeavor he feels Lindy will bring real enthusiasm to. Banner tries to intercede on behalf of their latest victim, but Whitfield simply scoffs and dismisses him. Perhaps Banner feels he's being treated unfairly? For him, this deal just keeps getting worse all the time. On a westbound train, Spencer finds out another late spring blizzard has covered the tracks. After, he has a conversation with the conductor, and we finally know what's going on in the Season 1 opener, where we have a flashback to Spencer in action as a doughboy. It's a battle in the Meuse-Argonne Offensive, an engagement that finally won the war for the Western Allies, but only at great cost. About half of all the casualties the U.S. took in the entire war happened during that 47-day grind, the largest battle in the history of the United States Army. It was the final brutal campaign that ended that war. Somewhere on the trail from the Yellowstone to Bozeman, Jack senses something's wrong and takes shelter, but the Rogue Livestock Commission deputies have already spotted him. Thinking these deputies are loyal to his uncle, Jack lets his guard down and approaches them, only to be shot dead while boasting. While I knew these Livestock Commission deputies were bad, I just didn't think they would blow Jack away at this point, despite how logical it actually is. It's the kind of confrontation Taylor Sheridan does best, the out-of-nowhere shooting that leaves you in shock. Jack's then dragged away to Whitfield's dumping ground in the park. This is going to be another rough break for Liz, who's been through hell in this series. On the open prairie, circling buzzards lead Teonna and runs his horse to the bodies of Pete and Marshall Kent lying where they fell. As Teonna weeps, Runs' horse laments that there's no way to give Pete a traditional funeral. He then looks at Marshall Kent's body, and it's hard to know what he's thinking. While he's seen the wanted posters and surely can tell that Kent's riddled with pistol shots while Pete had only a rifle at the ready, for whatever reason, he claims to Teonna that Pete gave his life to free her, and now they can go and live with their people to the north. In Chicago, Alex's new British friends aren't dangerous sociopaths like I thought. Turns out Paul and Hillary are just drunk and dumb. After they hear Alex's story and call it fascinating, there's no two ways about it. They're just not that smart. Alex's journey has been a slow and sort of boring story of bad luck and humiliation this season. When their car journey makes really good progress in a montage, I was tempted to believe they might just pull off the drive to the Yellowstone. Back on the prairie, a grieving Teonna and Runs' horse are pondering the loss of Pete as they try to sleep, when out of the brush comes none other than Father Renault. He spotted their ill-considered campfire on the treeless plain and has moved in for the kill. With 2 shots, he takes out Runs' horse. He then menaces Teonna and demands she renounce her evil ways. She defiantly refuses. He pulls the trigger and we hear a heavy click. He tries again, but Teonna's on him and stuns him with embers from the fire. As he stumbles around disoriented, Teonna pulls her buck knife and mixes it up with the evil cleric, leaving him in a heap. She then finishes him off with a few rounds from Runs' horse's pistol. Bye-bye, bad man. While I would have liked for Teonna to have gotten Marshall Kent as well, it seems that now most of her story is finished. If Runs' horse was right about the death of Kent and now Renault freeing her from the past, Teonna doesn't necessarily need to be in the story again, beyond maybe seeing her ride into the Bozeman area. That said, it's pretty hard to believe that the deaths or disappearances of 2 federal marshals and a priest in pursuit of a serial killer who already had 5 confirmed victims would be the kind of thing that would bring an enormous amount of heat down onto the person who they were looking for when this happened, who may now have 10 victims if people aren't too particular about counting up the bodies. We quickly check in with Spencer at a train station making a transfer. He's got his cold weather gear on and remarks about being in the Rockies. We end with Alex. She awakes in the frigid car to see Hillary's frozen corpse. A few yards away in the snow lies Paul. She slams the door against the South Dakota cold and starts to panic. The episode ends with us seeing just how snowed in and far off the road that car Alex is in really is. This situation does not seem escapable. It was a wild episode, and wow, do I ever have questions about how this series will end. I'm used to the historical and geographic liberties the show takes, and I may just make another video dealing with only that, but for now, there's too much to cover. In this episode, only 5 shots are fired by Father Renault before he runs out of ammunition. When I rewatched the attack that took out Marshal Ross, Father Renault was handed the pistol that Marshal Kent apparently just had on him. In that incident, the camera work and overlapping fire were just too much confusion, and I lost count of whether he fired 6 shots or only 5. The bottom line is, I guess Teonna was just plain lucky. Whether it was a backup gun with a 5-round cylinder or Father Renault had merely expended all his ammunition. In the first gunfight we saw him in, he had lost track of his ammunition and was dry firing too. That's all we really know for sure. I enjoyed episode 6. It was more action-packed and exciting than the 2 episodes that preceded it. The end of Marshal Kent and Father Renault was really satisfying, and the end of Jack was a shocker that leaves me worried about how Liz will take it. I give this episode a B+. There are a few contradictory things that just didn't hold up to historical analysis or even past the LOL test. Much of it involves Alex's story, which has never been all that engaging and has featured her getting rescued a couple of times. The fact Spencer still hasn't made it home hurts a little too. He should be there by now. You have to wonder if Teonna will play any role in what happens in the showdown at the Yellowstone. Her part in this tale feels pretty much over. She's no longer that close to where Spencer is, so it doesn't seem possible for her and Spencer to meet up on the road home. It really looked like Marshall Fawcett would somehow unify these stories, but that ship seems to have sailed. Teonna's story was always about the bad guys she was up against. While I enjoyed it, if nothing changes in the final episode, there's a case to be made her story was a needlessly dark distraction. Now for the rumors and apparent real change of plans swirling around the final 2 episodes. As far as the main rumor, that there will be no episode 8. In a sense, everyone's right. There won't be an 8th air date, but it seems that Paramount Plus has folded episode 7 and 8 into a one-night event. Just why is hard to say. Paramount has said the show is done very well, with over 50% audience growth from season 1. It seems like the views are there, and it probably wouldn't have hurt to allow the series 8 weeks as it was scheduled for. It's possible combining the final 2 episodes was always the plan, or at least considered as a possibility. The biggest criticism of this show has been that it's paced in a vaguely unsatisfying way and has meandered into one too many side quests. Perhaps Paramount thought another vaguely unsatisfying episode would tip the scales against the series as a whole. Every streaming series risks being irrelevant and poorly regarded if the ending is too heavily criticized. Recently, the end of the primary Yellowstone show with Kevin Costner was considered to be a disappointing whimper rather than a roar by many. Was Paramount afraid this would happen again? Or was too much of this story's ending being held back to be finished in another Yellowstone prequel? There's plenty indication a show set in the 1930s or 40s is in the works. Could it be all to protect the reputation of Taylor Sheridan, the one creator at Paramount whose shows create a buzz? It's also very possible. We'll find out when we see the final installment. Anyway, thank you for your time. It's appreciated. Please consider hitting those like and follow buttons and turn on that notification bell. I'm Admiral Teague, and I'll see you out there.